They say success changes a man. They're wrong. Success only decorates him, gives him titles, wealth, noise to hide the silence within. But rejection doesn't decorate. It reshapes. It burns away illusions until only truth remains. Every man remembers his first rejection, not just from love, but from life itself. A dream denied, a heart discarded, a voice silenced by laughter. It starts small. A no, a smirk, a look that says you're not enough. And in that moment, something breaks. Not loudly, but quietly, deep inside. Something sacred collapses. For me, it began with her. A woman whose smile once felt like sunrise after endless night. Her words had been gentle once, filled with promise. But the world taught her something cruel. That love without wealth is a story without ending. So she left. Not out of hatred, but hunger. The kind that devours compassion. She wanted a future carved from gold, not faith. And I couldn't blame her. Because back then, I was just a man with empty pockets and overflowing dreams. When she walked away, the world didn't notice. But I did. Because in that silence, I heard something I'd never heard before. The sound of purpose being born. See, rejection doesn't just end you. It introduces you to the man you could become. If you're willing to die as who you are. The night she left, I remember sitting in the rain, my hands trembling, my breath shallow. I kept asking why. Why wasn't I enough? Why did love need proof? But life doesn't answer in words. It answers in echoes. And that night, I heard the first one, a whisper that said, "Good. Now burn." From that moment, I stopped waiting for the world to notice me. I decided I'd make it impossible to ignore me. I realized that pain wasn't punishment. It was instruction. Every rejection was a teacher, and I had finally enrolled in the class of the damned. They say every man has 2 lives, the one before he's broken, and the one after. The first life is full of dreams. The second is built from ashes. The first man hopes. The second one acts. Rejection taught me that success isn't a reward. It's revenge. Not against others, but against weakness. Against the version of yourself that begged for acceptance. And as I rebuilt myself, brick by bloody brick, I understood that the world doesn't respect goodness. It respects power. And power, real power, is born when pain finally finds purpose. I stopped loving softness. I stopped chasing validation. I learned to stand in rooms where I wasn't invited, to command respect without asking for it. Years passed. The same woman who once left me for being nothing watched me become the man she could never reach again. She called once. I never answered. Because rejection had already done its work. It had sculpted me into silence, the kind that doesn't beg, doesn't explain, just exists, unshakable. But here's the truth. No one tells you about rejection. It doesn't just make you strong. It makes you selective. You stop craving love. You start studying it. You stop chasing approval. You start demanding authenticity. Because when a man has walked through hell, he doesn't kneel for heaven. He builds his own. And in the fire that rejection left behind, I found something more dangerous than success. Clarity. The clarity that every no you ever hear isn't a wall. It's a mirror. And what you see reflected back isn't failure. It's potential. Unpolished. Unproven. Waiting for blood to shape it. They told me rejection would break me. They were right. But they forgot. The same fire that destroys also forges. And what rose from that fire wasn't the man she left. It was the man she never deserved. Before rejection sculpted me into something sharp, I was soft. A dreamer, not yet aware that dreams are the most dangerous things a man can carry. Because the world doesn't reward dreamers, it feeds on them. Back then, I believed in love the way children believe in forever, without doubt, without armor. I thought love was proof that goodness still mattered. I thought kindness could change people, that loyalty would always be enough. She appeared in my life like light through a cracked window, sudden, unexpected, and unbearably beautiful. The kind of woman who didn't need to say much because her presence said everything. Her laughter had rhythm, her silence had weight. And when she looked at me, I felt seen. Not for what I had, but for who I was. At least that's what I told myself. I met her in a place where people pretended to chase purpose. A library filled with faces trying to look busy escaping their own lives. She was sitting by the window, reading something I didn't understand. But I remember thinking, if I could make her smile, maybe I'd matter. And for a while, I did. We built our own little world. Stolen coffees, endless talks, plans that had no foundation except faith. I didn't have money, but I had conviction. I didn't have a future, but I had hope. And sometimes, that felt richer than any fortune. We dreamed out loud. About traveling, about building something of our own, about the kind of love that makes the world jealous. I used to write her small notes, things I was too shy to say out loud. She said she loved my words. But now I realize, she loved who I was becoming for her, not who I was without her. Love, when you're young, feels immortal. You think it's stronger than fear, tougher than circumstance. But time has a way of testing all illusions. And mine were paper thin. The first cracks came quietly. A sigh when the bill arrived, a glance at someone else's car, a pause when I talked about my future that didn't include luxury, just effort. She said she believed in me. But belief, I learned, has limits. Especially when the world whispers that success is the only language worth speaking. I worked harder. Took extra shifts, built plans around her dreams instead of mine. Because that's what love does when it's pure. It gives without counting. But the cruelest truth? The more I gave, the smaller I became in her eyes. The night she changed, I could feel it before she spoke. There was a distance, invisible but loud. Her touch no longer lingered. Her eyes wandered when I spoke. And the silence between us grew teeth. When she finally said it, her words were soft, almost merciful. She said she needed to find herself, that I was good, but good wasn't enough, that love doesn't pay rent or buy dreams. And just like that, everything I'd built, every thought, every heartbeat, collapsed quietly inside me. Because it wasn't just her leaving. It was everything I believed in. Honesty, effort, purity, walking out with her. People think heartbreak is loud, but it's not. It's the quiet that kills you. The stillness after she leaves, when your world still remembers her footsteps, but not her return. I remember sitting in my tiny apartment, her things gone, the air heavier than it had ever been. Her perfume still lingered, faint, stubborn, cruel. And I realized I wasn't mourning her. I was mourning the version of myself that believed love could save him. Because love doesn't save men. It tests them. And rejection. Rejection finishes the lesson. In the weeks that followed, I changed without realizing it. I spoke less. Smiled less. Started looking at people differently. Not as souls, but as equations. What did they want? What did they take? What did they leave behind? I saw how easily affection turns to convenience, how quickly loyalty bends when tested, How the same lips that kissed you can rewrite you as a memory without guilt. But here's the cruel irony. I didn't hate her. I couldn't. Because a part of me still believed that maybe she was right. Maybe love without power is weakness. Maybe poverty, no matter how noble, is just another form of invisibility. That thought haunted me more than the loss itself. Because if she was right, then my entire life was wrong. And I couldn't live with that. So I did what broken men do. I buried the boy who believed. I buried him deep, beneath ambition and silence. I replaced his faith with fury, his hope with hunger. And the man who rose from that grave wasn't built for love anymore. He was built for victory, for vengeance, for the kind of success that doesn't heal you. It humbles everyone who doubted you. Looking back now, I understand. Rejection didn't destroy me. It revealed me. It showed me the truth about this world, that love is conditional, that loyalty expires, and that only power can make pain shut up. They say the boy inside every man never truly dies. But mine did. And in his place stood something the world would learn to fear. Because when a man loses love, he searches for meaning. And when he fails to find it, he builds his own. They say heartbreak fades with time. But mine didn't fade. It fermented. Every sleepless night distilled into something stronger, darker, until pain became my only companion. At first, I tried to move on the way people say you should. Go out more. Work harder. Forget her. But forgetting is a lie people tell themselves to survive. You don't forget. You evolve. The man who once waited for her messages now waited for opportunities. The man who once dreamt of love started dreaming of power. Because love had failed me. Power, I decided, wouldn't. I started studying people. Not from affection, but from observation. How they moved. How they lied. How easily they sold their morals for comfort. And I realized something terrifying. Everyone was playing a game. I had just been the only fool who didn't know it. So, I learned the rules. And then, I learned how to break them. I took every ounce of my heartbreak and turned it into discipline. While the world slept, I was awake. Planning, working, building. I cut off distractions, erased pity, and drowned the echoes of her voice in silence. Days blurred into years. And slowly, the world began to notice what rejection had created. I built my empire from the ground up, brick by betrayal, profit by pain. Every deal I made, every step I climbed, I whispered her words back to myself. Good isn't enough. And she was right. Good men don't change the world. Broken ones do. There's something about rejection that redefines a man's soul. It strips away innocence and replaces it with focus. You start valuing what truly matters. Not affection, but advantage. Not sympathy, but strategy. People who once looked down on me now bowed in quiet respect. Old friends called to check in. New faces smiled too quickly. And every time I saw them, I thought, where were you when I was nothing? The truth is, success doesn't make you powerful. It just exposes how many people were waiting for you to fail. And through it all, through the noise, the money, the rise, I kept seeing her. Her face in crowds, her laughter in strangers, her memory in every victory I achieved. Not because I still loved her, but because she had become the ghost that guided my ambition. The woman who destroyed me had unknowingly built me. But what no one tells you about rising is that it comes with silence. The higher you climb, the fewer people understand the view. And in that silence, I began to hear a new voice. My own, but colder. It told me I didn't just want success. I wanted proof. Proof that her choice had been the biggest mistake of her life. Proof that the world was wrong to doubt me. Proof that every scar was worth it. I started tracking her life. Not obsessively, just enough to know she'd chosen comfort over conviction. Her new man had everything I once lacked. Money, status, luxury. But there was something missing in her eyes, something hollow. Maybe guilt, maybe boredom, maybe realization. Still, I didn't reach out. Revenge wasn't about confrontation. It was about evolution. Mine, not hers. The best revenge is not making them suffer. It's making them irrelevant. But inside, a war was brewing. Because no matter how strong I became, a part of me still remembered the softness I'd buried. That version of me, the boy who believed in love, kept whispering from the grave. And I silenced him the only way I knew how, by becoming everything he couldn't. People called me ruthless. They were right, but they never asked why. They didn't see the years of humiliation, the loneliness, the nights I had to rebuild myself with nothing but spite. They only saw the result. A man who never flinched, never begged, never trusted. But I knew the truth. This wasn't strength. It was armor. Because when you've been broken once, you spend the rest of your life making sure no one gets the chance to do it again. There's a saying, the devil was once an angel who got tired of being overlooked. That line used to scare me. Now, I understood it. I wasn't evil. I was efficient. I didn't crave destruction. I craved control. Because control is what rejection steals first. And vengeance is how you take it back. Years passed, and with them came success, wealth, power, recognition. But none of it filled the void. Because revenge isn't about peace. It's about balance. And balance always demands a reckoning. I wasn't the boy she rejected anymore. I was the storm she created. And I knew one day, inevitably, our paths would cross again. Not by fate, but by design. Because men like me, the ones forged in silence, hardened by heartbreak, we don't chase closure. We become it. Fate has a strange sense of humor. It doesn't knock. It circles. And when it finally returns, it does so quietly, as if it never left at all. The day I saw her again, the world didn't slow down. It didn't tremble or whisper my name. It simply carried on, as if it didn't realize history was folding back on itself. It was a charity event, the kind of evening where people wore masks they called manners, laughter too loud, compliments too sharp, promises too empty. And there she was, standing beneath the chandelier light, wearing the same look of grace that once made me forget who I was. But I wasn't that man anymore, and she could feel it before I even spoke. Because rejection doesn't just change the heart, it alters the energy in your presence. The air around you becomes heavier, more deliberate, as if time itself bends to watch you move. When our eyes met, something unspoken passed between us. Recognition, regret, and fear, not of me, but of what she saw in herself through me. For years, I had imagined this moment. I thought I'd feel rage, or vindication, or triumph. But all I felt was stillness. Like standing at the edge of a grave you've already buried your emotions in. People around her whispered my name. She smiled nervously, the kind of smile that tried to bridge years of silence. But I didn't return it. Because revenge isn't about confrontation. It's about transformation. And mine was complete. She approached, spoke, pretended the past was light enough to carry in a polite conversation. But I could see it. The tremor behind her eyes. That invisible realization that the man before her was no longer the one who once begged for her time. I didn't need to remind her of what she'd done. Life had already done that for me. You could see it in the way she held her champagne, carefully, like she was afraid to spill truth into the open. You could hear it in her laugh. Short, practiced, hollow. Her life had given her everything she wanted, except meaning. And that's the cruel poetry of rejection. She had chosen a world that looked perfect, but felt empty. I had lost everything, and somehow found myself. The tables don't turn with vengeance. They turn with growth. She asked about my life. I spoke little. I didn't need to say much. Success has its own language. Every headline, every whisper, every silent envy in the room was already telling my story. She mentioned her husband, a man built of status, not soul. And though his hand rested on her waist, her eyes never left mine. Because in that brief silence between us, she saw the truth. She hadn't chosen a man. She'd chosen security. And now she was watching what real power looked like. The kind built in the ruins of rejection. That night, I didn't stay long. Revenge doesn't need witnesses. It only needs realization. As I walked away, I could feel her gaze on my back. Not longing, but awakening. The same kind of awakening that once ripped through me the night she left. And I understood then that pain is circular. It doesn't disappear. It just finds a new home. In the weeks that followed, her messages began to appear. A congratulations, a proud of you. Then silence. Then another, longer this time, layered with what she wouldn't dare say aloud. But I didn't answer. Because revenge, real revenge, isn't about making them suffer. It's about proving that you don't need their validation anymore. That the version of you they destroyed was only the seed of something greater. She had taught me rejection. Now I was teaching her consequence. I heard through others that her marriage had begun to crumble, not with drama, but with distance, the kind that spreads quietly, like frost across glass. Her husband's empire was built on appearance, mine, on endurance. And while his began to fracture, mine only grew. There's an irony to revenge that no one tells you about. When you finally get it, you don't feel victorious. You feel older. Because the moment you win, you realize how much of yourself you sacrificed just to reach the point of not needing them anymore. Sometimes I catch myself wondering what might have happened if she had stayed. If she had seen beyond the struggle, beyond the broken dreams. Maybe I would have remained soft. Maybe I would have lived quietly. Maybe I would have never discovered the man I truly was. But fate doesn't make mistakes. It removes what's temporary so you can build what's timeless. And yet, in the quiet hours of the night, when the world forgets my name and success feels hollow, I still hear her laughter in the back of my mind. Not as love, as memory, as warning. Rejection doesn't just change men. It resurrects them. It strips them to their bones and forces them to rebuild, without illusions, without mercy. And when they return, the world barely recognizes them. That night at the gala, when she looked into my eyes, I saw it all reflected back at me. The pain, the loss, the transformation. And I realized something no one ever told me about revenge. You don't take it. You become it. Time moves differently once vengeance is complete. It doesn't rush. It lingers, like smoke after a fire, carrying the scent of everything you've burned. Years have passed since the night I saw her again. The empire I built now stands taller than my pain ever did. Every deal, every decision, every victory, all carved from the bones of rejection. People call me successful now. They call me powerful, visionary, disciplined. But they never used the word that built it all, broken. Because that's what I was, a man shattered into pieces who refused to stay that way. Rejection taught me something that success never could, that love is fragile, but pain is permanent. And permanence, when harnessed, becomes purpose. I walk through marble halls and glass offices now, the kind I once cleaned at night for extra pay. And sometimes, I catch my reflection in those same windows and barely recognize the man staring back. His eyes no longer seek affection. They measure everything, everyone. Because once you've been discarded, you learn to value nothing at face value again. Rejection doesn't end when they leave. It lingers in the way you question every smile, every promise. It shapes the way you walk, slower, but heavier. It sharpens your instincts until you can sense deceit before it's spoken. That's the true transformation no one sees. Not the success, but the silence that follows it. People think revenge gives closure. It doesn't. It gives understanding. You stop asking why it happened and start realizing who you became, because it did. Sometimes, late at night, I still replay those moments. Her turning away, my hands trembling with shame, the cold that filled my chest when she chose comfort over conviction. But those memories no longer haunt me. They remind me. Because every empire, every legend, begins with a rejection. Every king was once ignored. Every storm began as a tear. Pain is the universe's most honest sculptor. It carves men down until only their truth remains. I used to think revenge was the destination. Now I know. It was just the road that led me back to myself. What I sought in her was validation. What I found in loss was clarity. She reached out again a few years ago. A letter this time. Apologies written in the language of nostalgia. The kind that sounds like love but smells like regret. I never answered. Not out of hatred. That emotion had long expired. But because I finally understood something. I had spent years trying to prove my worth to someone who couldn't see it, when all along, I only needed to prove it to myself. That realization is the real revenge. When you no longer need them to feel whole. When you can look at the ruins and smile, not because you won, but because you survived. I sometimes wonder if she ever looks at her life and thinks about me. If she sees my name in the papers or hears my voice in interviews and feels the faint echo of what could have been. Maybe she does. Maybe she doesn't. But either way, I've already made peace with the answer. Because rejection didn't destroy me. It introduced me to who I was always meant to be. Pain was my tutor. Silence, my ally. Time, my architect. And somewhere between heartbreak and rebirth, I stopped chasing love and started embodying purpose. Success is loud. Peace is quiet. And vengeance, real vengeance, is neither. It's simply the absence of need. Now, when I look back, I don't see her face anymore. I see the fire she lit. And I thank her. Not with words, but with the life I built in her absence. Because the cruelest truth about rejection is this. It's not the end of your story. It's the end of who you were never meant to be. We all get broken once, but some of us stay shattered, and some of us learn to build something unbreakable from the pieces. I chose the latter, and now when people ask what drives me, I don't say ambition or revenge. I just tell them the truth. Pain was my beginning. Rejection was my teacher, and silence became my kingdom. They say success changes men. But that's not true. It only reveals them. What changes a man, truly, deeply, permanently, is rejection. Because success teaches you how to win. But rejection teaches you why. And as I stand here watching the world bow to what it once dismissed, I realize I never needed her to believe in me. I needed her to doubt me. Because doubt was the spark, pain was the fuel, and fire was my rebirth. In the end, rejection didn't break me, it built me. And that, I suppose, is the cruelest poetry of all. She rejected me when I was nothing. Now she begs for what's gone forever.